Welcome to our How to Build an Applicant Tracking System in Hubspot webinar. I am excited to share this session with you today, and it's going to be filled with a ton of information. I probably know most of you, either we've talked face-to-face before, or I've seen you on LinkedIn, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mandy Thompson. I'm one of the founders of Digital Reach, and we work with companies to help them solve their technology problems as it relates to processes that interface with their customers or marketing solutions. And so I've been working in the tech space and in the marketing space for about 12 years now. Love technology, love marketing, love all things systems and integrations. And so building this ATS was a natural fit. But a little bit more about me. I'm based in Albuquerque, and when I'm not working, I love to be out on the slope snowboarding. I'm actually in Taos right now because there's going to be a storm coming in later this week. So we're spending the week up here and trying to catch some snowboarding in the afternoon, and also love to travel. So that's me. Enough about me. So we're going to go ahead and move on and jump right into the content. And I see that about 10 of you have been to one of our webinars before. So for those of you, it is good to see you again. Thank you for being back. So like I said, we're going to cover a lot here today. So as usual, if you've done a webinar with me before, I talk pretty fast. I move pretty fast, but great news, you will get a copy of this recording. So if I move too fast, you'll be able to reference back to that. But we're going to cover a lot of stuff. Take a look at this agenda, right? We're going to talk about what an ATS is. I think a lot of you probably already know, or you wouldn't be here, but we're still going to cover that real quick. And then we're going to talk about why you want to build this system in HubSpot. What are the benefits of doing so? And what is possible with that system? Because I'm going to show you the build that I created, and we're going to have a look at that build from a build plan and like the elements of building it and a little bit of like how you build it so that you could get started with a plan of your own. And then we're also going to take a look at what does the experience look like using this system internally for your team who would be managing these applicants and for the applicant themselves, right? And then we're also going to talk about just a little bit about like why it's important to have a great ATS and the benefits of doing so from a process standpoint, but also from a candidate standpoint. And then we'll touch on as well, if you have the right hubs to build this ATS, the tools you will use, because we used a lot of HubSpot in building this system, which is really exciting. So let's start out here. I have another poll. What is an ATS, right? Let's start out and talk about that. Again, I think that most of you probably know what an ATS or an HRIS is, but I do have another poll here. Does your organization currently use an ATS or an HRIS? So I see that we have one person so far that said spreadsheets, one person so far that said dedicated tool or platform. Would love to get some more answers here and understand what your experience is with an ATS. But what an ATS is, at its core, it's an applicant tracking system, right? So typically what these systems do, they allow you to post jobs out into the world. They allow you to receive applicants, track those applicants through a process, and track your interaction with them. Now, for those of you who use an ATS, and maybe we can chat about this a little bit in the chat section, a lot of people aren't happy with the ATS that they have. Either they're too complex, or they're missing features, or it's too expensive for the need, especially for a small business, right? If you're a recruiting firm, then it might make sense to spend money on something like Bullhorn, right? But if you are a small business like us, we're 40 people. When we looked at this, which is what made us build this ATS, was evaluating ATS technology and not finding anything that fit all of our needs, and also looking at the cost, right? Do I want to add on $700 to $1,000 a month in software expense when I thought about it, I'm like, I think I already can do this in the software that I have today, in the HubSpot subscriptions that I have. So that is, that's where this idea was born from. And that's where we decided to start building this. So, but an ATS, right? Again, it's where we're tracking our applicants throughout a process in order to organize our tracking of them and make it easier, more streamlined, and hopefully have better communication with our applicants. So let's talk about why you would build your ATS in HubSpot. So I already covered one of the reasons why. And of course, one of those reasons is that you already have the software, right? Like, why are we going to add additional software costs when we don't need to? Now, some people may need features that come in other systems. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, right? But first of all, we want to have an inclusive and equitable process. So this ATS automates, for us, the one that I built, it automates our first 3 rounds of screening. This means that we do not introduce our own cognitive biases, and we all have them. We're not introducing those until someone has already had an opportunity to do more than send their resume in. They've had an opportunity to answer screening questions. They've had an opportunity to take a behavioral psychometric test, and they've had an opportunity to go through the video round of interviews. This means that we're making a decision about somebody, we're getting far more information about them. And what studies have shown is that the more we know about somebody, the less bias that we have, right? And so that's one of the things that I think is really important. Also, that it's highly customizable, right? Like not everybody's hiring process is the same. So the fact that we can customize our hiring pipeline using either a custom object pipeline or a deal pipeline or a ticket pipeline. In this case, we used a ticket one for this build, okay? So regardless of what type of pipeline you're using, you can customize all your stages. You can use powerful automation through HubSpot. You can use meeting links to go ahead and book people. There's so much that you can do to customize. Of course, we can use smart content in our emails and our landing pages. So it's a ton that we can do. And then again, it maximizes automation and efficiency. When I took a look and evaluated Greenhouse as an option for us, as well as a couple of others, when I finally decided to build one inside of HubSpot, I saw that the customization of automation and the nuance of automation wasn't as powerful, right? Because we all know HubSpot is a super powerful automation machine. It's part of the reason we love using it and working in it and building in it. And so you can really get a lot more automation and efficiency, in my opinion, using HubSpot, not only through workflows, but also through things like smart content and meeting links. It's also very humane for candidates. When we're leveraging automation, think about this. When you get 700 candidates coming in, it's really hard to manage getting all of your communication to everybody on time, especially when you get further along in the process, right? Early in the process, we have auto rejection or whatever it may be. And so that stuff is a little bit easier. But the further we get into the hiring pipeline, the less likely people are to keep their candidates in the loop, right? And think about our candidates. They're trying to get a job. And so we want to make sure that we're respectful and considerate of them. So these automations allow us to do that. And then the other thing is just it's really easy to use internally, right? We all love the beautiful record layout inside of HubSpot, especially now that we can do things like customize the center feed, add CRM cards. And I'll show you some of those today as well to see how you can make your ATS even more interactive for the people who are using it internally. And then we have powerful reporting. Again, the ability that we have to create all of these custom dashboards in HubSpot now passes along to our applicant tracking system. So we can see the number of people that applied for each opening. We can see which ones, how many people passed each, went through each stage, right? So the same way that we do deal fall-off reports, we can do applicant fall-off reports, and we can learn things about our hiring process through there. And then we also have an organized candidate profile, right? In each contact record or ticket or however you're tracking this, you're going to have the resume and all this information so that in the future, when you have another opening, you can go ahead and look inside of your own ATS that's in HubSpot and determine, hey, look, I already have, 15 people that made it to the second to last stage that are a match for the next role. Let me get a jump start on my process and let me reach out to those people and see if they're interested in applying again. So it really does give you a lot of power. And when every bit of data is so accessible like it is in HubSpot, you can do a lot with it. So that's why we built this in HubSpot. So now let's go ahead, and talk about what this as ATS does for you. But while we're doing that, I have another poll and a quick question for everybody here, kind of taking a measurement of skill and experience level in HubSpot. How many of you feel confident in you or your team's ability to build an ATS in HubSpot? I know you don't even know all the things that go into it yet, and we'll get there, but just let me know, how you feel. I see that 3 people already said not sure. 1 person very confident. I love to hear it. Okay. So what does this ATS do for you? So as I already mentioned, we have 3, went a little too fast there. We have 3 automated rounds of screening. All right. We're segmenting our applicants automatically, right? We're using active lists. So based on the role they applied for, their behavioral profile, their cognitive scores, we're getting everybody into these lists so that we can easily track down the people who are a fit, again, right now or for future roles. So I'll give you an example here. Right now, we're hiring for a role, and we know the exact profile in Predictive Index, which is our psychometric testing. We know exactly who we need. So guess what? I was able to go through here, filter for people who met that profile, look at what their job experience was, look at what they'd applied for in the past, and start to reach out to people and book interviews before we even posted the job. So that's super exciting. So you can see here in this pipeline where our screening rounds 1, 2, and 3 are, and everything is automated. These tickets get created, they move from one stage to another without anybody doing anything. And if the applicants don't complete the steps that they need to within the time frame that they're given, it also automatically moves them to the not hired stage, sends them an email letting them know they're no longer in the process. It's really cool. We'll take a look at all of this a little bit more in a minute. Okay. And some other things that this ATS does for you, and then we'll actually jump in and start taking a look at how it's built. But some other things that it does It's going to save time in the interview booking rounds. And so this is something when I talk to HR professionals, it is such a time suck to have to go through and go back and forth with people to book. Well, what our ATS does is if your ticket gets moved to the first interview approved stage, that triggers automations that will send an email to the applicant for them to book that interview. The thing that it's going to do is it's going to use smart content. So we don't have to make 15 different emails for every role that we have. We have one workflow, we have one email, but it uses smart content. As I said earlier, we segment people based on what they applied for onto lists. So that drives what version of smart content they see so that they get the right meeting link. And then we use automation to check and see if they book their interview within 48 hours. And if they don't, then we move them to not hired, right? So we're automating that. And then, of course, we can keep everybody on track and informed. So externally, we're sending emails to our candidates. Internally, we're creating tasks. We are sending internal notifications, email notifications, Slack notifications, whatever it is, to keep everybody in the loop and to make sure that on our side, we're doing what we need to once the automated screening is over to move our applicants through the process. And then, of course, we can report on our applicants, we can understand demographics and continue to improve our process. So now let's talk real quick before we get into looking at HubSpot. Let's go ahead. I have one more question for you in the polls. I want to know if you have the hubs that are needed. I'm going to start talking about what hubs are needed. Okay. So the hubs that we need to run this process are at least, so at a minimum, you need to have Service or Sales Hub Pro and you need to have Marketing Pro. Now, I'm going to preface this with, you can do workarounds without having all those hubs. I think it is very difficult to do this without Marketing Hub Pro. However, if you have Marketing Hub Pro and Sales Hub or Service Hub Starter, you would be able to do this. However, it would not be nearly as automated because, of course, we have a lot more ways to impact records that are created in dealer ticket pipelines through automation when we have a Pro Hub or above. Now, the reason I call it an Enterprise Hub is that if you have an Enterprise Hub, then you could create a custom object, right? And you could create a pipeline for that custom object rather than using tickets or rather than using deals. Now, one thing I like about using tickets, in addition to not needing an Enterprise Hub if you don't have one, is that if you are using tickets, you can apply SLAs to your pipeline to make sure that you're getting to your applicants fast enough. And so that's something that you could use that's a native feature inside of the Service Hub, which is super fun. So it looks like some of you do not have the hubs. A lot of you do have the hubs. So that's great to hear. We're going to go ahead and jump in now to start looking at what it's going to take to build this. So this is an exciting part. What tools are you going to use to build this? Well, we are going to use a lot of tools in HubSpot to build this. So as I mentioned before, we're going to create a pipeline and our stages to track everything. Then we're going to use custom properties so that screening questions, resume upload, all of that stuff, we can create a group of properties and have those. We're going to use forms with hidden properties. We're going to use emails with landing pages with smart content. We're going to use active lists, meeting links, API for private apps. So this would be for custom integrations or for CRM cards. We'll use the task and task player, workflows, and then you can also use playbooks. Think about this. If you want to have a standard interview where everybody goes through the same questions every time, use a playbook for that, right? And then that makes it easier to collect that information, especially if you have Sales or Service Hub Enterprise, and you can write those playbook answers to custom properties. And then let's say that you want to check out and see how these interviews are going. Well, then we can use call intelligence connected with Zoom or connected with HubSpot calling. We can look at calls that went well or didn't go well and create playlists. So all of these tools that might not have been built for an ATS can be used for one when you build in HubSpot. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start and take a look at what we need to do to build an ATS, all right? So we want to start out by actually mapping out what our process is. So who here has mapped out a process before? We have another question in the poll. Who here has mapped out a question before using diagramming like this so that you could build something into HubSpot? So go ahead and let me know. And then we also have a handout for you right now. So if you check out that handout tab, we are going to give you this Lucid chart, a little bit of a cleaner one in a downloadable PDF. So you can go ahead and grab that in the handout tab. But what we want to do is we want to start out with mapping our process. It is so much easier to build something when we've actually mapped our process out. And then we want to determine the elements that we need. Again, that's like, do we need a form here? Do we need a workflow here? And then we want to create an order of operations for building, okay? So then how do you start? The first thing we want to do is we want to build out our assets. We want to create our automations, and then we want to test what we have built and go live. So now what I want to do is I'm going to jump into the Lucid chart and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what this particular ATS does from a process standpoint to see if that works with what you're looking to accomplish with your own team. Okay. So let me go ahead and take you over here and let's go ahead and take a look at this Lucid chart. So you're going to see that we have a lot of different steps to this process, and that there's a lot of automation built in here. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here and take a look at this. Anytime you see one of these little cogs, this is a place where we have automation. Okay. So if we take a look at this, we post a job, we have a landing page for the job, an applicant fills out the form, and then we use automation to determine if they pass our screening. So we have screening questions to figure out, is this person going to qualify and do they have the experience required for the role that we're looking at? Okay. And then what happens is if they pass the screening, then they automatically get an email asking them to take our predictive index, cognitive, and behavioral testing, right? Now, if they don't pass, we do a manual review here. So I know I said earlier, the first 3 rounds are automated, and for the most part, they are. However, we do have a manual review there just in case somebody sticks out and like they might not have the experience we're looking for, but we want to keep them in the process, okay? Then once somebody takes the cognitive test, then we go ahead and we check to see if they submit it within 24 hours. We send a reminder. If they don't submit it in 48 hours, then they go to not hired, right? So all of this happens automatically. And the cool part of this is we also manage marketing contacts throughout this. So if somebody ends up in the not hired category, then we automatically remove them as a marketing contact. So we don't use too many marketing contacts because obviously we have to set people as a marketing contact, which we do when they fill out the initial form so that we can send them emails, okay? Then we have settings inside of our workflows that tell us what profile we want somebody to be and what cognitive score we require for that role. Again, if somebody matches those, they automatically move on to the next stage. If they don't match those, then they don't. Here's something I'm going to tell you that's been amazing for us using this ATS and that step right there. I would love to know, maybe tell me in the chat because I don't have a poll for this, but I would love to know how many of you use some sort of cognitive or behavioral testing when you're hiring. And what I want to call out here is if you don't, let me know. I have somebody, his name is Zach. He works with us. It's been a huge change for us in our hiring because what we used to do was we would have to look through hundreds of different applicants. Well, now with this process, number one, we're eliminating people who are not following the steps to the process or who don't have the experience that we need early on. But we're also making sure that somebody has the right profile fit for the role. This means that usually by the time we get to the video interviews, we're looking at less than 20 candidates. That's a lot less time intensive than looking at, 85 candidates that submitted video interviews. That's a lot of time to watch 3 to 5 minutes of video per candidate. So that's been a huge time saver for us. And the quality of our hiring has gone up significantly since we put this in place. So cannot emphasize enough how helpful that is. So then if they do pass this, then they get an automated email that sends them the video questions. And what you see here, right, we're checking to make sure that everyone is completing things in time and workflows. And if they don't, then we're moving them out of the process, right? Because for us, we want to make sure that people follow this process because that's important for us for somebody that we hire, okay? So then now we get to the first place where a human gets involved. That's why you see this little human icon here, right? And so now when we have the videos in, now we review those videos. If we want to move somebody in to a first interview, we automatically move them over and say, okay, or manually move their ticket over to the first interview approved stage. Because again, we always want our stages to be something that's been completed. So what's been completed is the first interview's been approved. So then we move it to that stage, sends them the email, gives them 48 hours to book. And then once they book, that shows up on the calendar of the person who's going to be running the interview. And then it's their job to decide after that interview whether they're moving them to the second stage or not, right? And then we do the same thing, make sure that they book in 48 hours. And then we start getting into some stuff that's a little bit more manual, like sending out a test task. But again, we make sure that somebody submits it within the allotted time. We have allotted time set up for each role. And then if they don't, we give a reminder. And if they still don't, then again, we move them on to not hired. So then again, this is all a lot of a human process here because we need to look at the test task. We need to decide if we're going to offer somebody a job. But at this point, we're also sending reminders to our internal team to ensure that they are being kind to our candidates and moving them through that process in a timely manner and keeping them in the loop. However, our first email we send out also lets people know how long each of the stages of the process is going to take. So super helpful, really fun to manage it this way. You have a copy of this If you want to get a copy of this in Lucidchart so that you can copy it and edit it for your own, please let us know. We do have this document that we used at Inbound because we did a longer version of this session at Inbound in 2023. So we do have a lot of content here, including the Lucidchart. And we also have a full course of this that shows you step by step how to build every single element. So we'll be sharing those in an email following the session. So please do keep an eye out for that. Okay. So now that we've taken a look at the build, let's actually get in here and take a look at how all this stuff looks in Hubspot. So we're going to jump into Hubspot in just a second here. So like I said, we're going to go ahead and build. So how many of you have built? I have another poll question. How many of you have built something complex in HubSpot before requiring the use of 5 or more tools or elements? Okay. So some of you here might be more operators who are building like that. Some of you might not be. So we have some people answering not yet. That's great. We're definitely going to give you a great jump start on being able to build. So some of you do this all the time. I love that. Okay. So here's some things that are really, really important to remember when you are building these elements out, right? Make an order of operations for yourself. In the Lucidchart that I'm going to share, it gives you a sample of an order of operation, because what we have to do is build all the individual components and then bring them together. So if we have an order of operations, the build is going to go smooth. If we don't, then we're going to be moving through, and then we're going to get to the email and realize we don't have the meeting link and blah, 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 blah. And so it's great to have an order of operations that's logical for you to follow. Okay. So some things that we're going to do, we're going to look at creating custom properties for one role. We're going to look at building a form. We're going to look at creating the list. So I'm going to show you what these elements look like inside of HubSpot. And then from there, we're also going to look at a custom sidebar. And we're also going to take a look at automation for the first 3 steps and a couple of the emails. So I'm going to go into HubSpot right now, but I have one more poll for you. I know lots of questions, but I'm wanting to get an idea of what everyone's experience is. I see a majority of you have not done complex builds before. That's okay. We're going to give you a look at how simple this is and how you really could tackle this on your own if you wanted to and have time. And of course, if you don't, there are other solutions for that as well. But I want to know, how many of you are using custom sidebars or custom center feeds? And if you've built those within HubSpot. So how many of those you've built? I have a question over there. But now I'm going to go ahead and hop right into the platform. So let's start here. Like I mentioned, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our custom properties, right? So we have our general hiring and onboarding, but then we also have screening questions for specific roles, right? So we have specific roles. We put those into sections. It makes it really easy to manage. And then we get into customizing the record, right? So we put these properties when somebody is on a list for hiring, we put these on the left-hand side so that you can easily access that information. So when you're looking at the contact or ticket record, you can get the resume, you can get their predictive index, you can see all these properties, which include the links to the videos that they submitted, and it keeps all of that very neatly in front of you. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. And then we want to create a form, right? So on our forms, we have, standard questions, we upload the resume, and then we bring all of this, we have all of these screening questions so that we can figure out whether somebody has the skills and experience for a specific role. And then we have some hidden fields where we're marking what job role this is for, right? So that way we can mark that as a property, and that's going to help us to segment those people onto the correct list. All right. So then if we take a look at this, this is what the form looks like on a page, of course. And then we get in here, and then we have everything. We have all of our applicants here, and then we also have all of them for a specific role there. And then this is where we're customizing our left side view, right? So we have our hiring customization for the left side view. So if we go down here, we have this set, and it's only showing if the job role applied for meets a certain thing, right? And so that's the general hiring information. And then the screening questions, we're only showing if somebody has applied for a specific role, right? So we set all of that up. It customizes the record. And then this is great because if someone's applied as a HubSpot SME, we see those questions. If that's not what they applied for, then we see the next set of questions, right? So we customize that left-hand sidebar so that and I'll give you an example of what that looks like. We customize that so that we're only seeing the hiring information, okay? And then we'll get over here. All right. So like I mentioned, we're going to take a look at some of the workflows we built, okay? So the first one we do is passing the screening. So in this one, here's what I recommend. I recommend building a workflow for every single one of your jobs, okay? Do not create just one workflow, in my opinion. And the reason I say this is that this workflow alone has a lot of if-then branches. And so if we get into, let me take a look here, right? Like this is a good size workflow as it is. I mean, it's not huge, right? We've all built bigger workflows than this, or at least a lot of us probably have. But if you extrapolate this out and you have 15 different roles or 20 different roles, that's a really big workflow to manage. So we want to keep this a little bit more concise so it's easier for you to manage, right? So the first thing we do in this workflow is we trigger this by someone having filled out that form, right? And then we set them as a marketing contact. And then what we're doing is checking to see if they pass screening or not, right? So we have requirements for each of these answers. And so if somebody meets all of those requirements, then we go ahead and we create a ticket and we put the ticket in the screening pass stage. So we skip the first stage of our process, which is application received. The reason we do that is that the people who do not pass screening, they land in the application received stage. And then we have an internal email notification and a task to go ahead and review that person's application to see if we want to move them on to get the predictive index test. If we don't, then we have to move them to not hired, and the system is going to remind us if we don't do that. Now, if they do pass the screening, then they go ahead and they get their email for the predictive index testing. We wait a day. We see if they've taken it. If they haven't, if they have, then we do nothing because they completed what we wanted to do and they're going to move on to the next stage, and there's another workflow for that. But if they haven't, then we're going to send them a reminder. We're going to give them a little extra time, even though we only gave them 48 hours total. We're going to give them another 48. But then if they haven't done it, then we're going to move the ticket to not hiring. We're going to remove them as a marketing contact. And then we have a hireable or not. And that is to help us segment people that we want to focus on in future roles. So the reason that hireable is no is just that you have not completed an early step of the process. So we're not going to prioritize someone in the future who did not complete the process. That's our approach. Your approach might be different. Then I'm going to take a look at another workflow here. So let's say that somebody did not pass the screening, right? So when they're in that first stage, we send them an email that just lets them know they're in the process and that we're going to get back to them within a couple of days. And so then we're going to wait a couple of days, but if the ticket hasn't been moved yet, we're going to send another internal notification. 2 more days if it still hasn't been moved, then we're going to send another notification as well, right? To make sure that we are moving people through the process and keeping our agreement that we make to them in our first email of how long this process is going to take. Now we get into, okay, let's say someone passed their screening manually, right? Somebody manually moves their ticket to the stage of screening pass, then this workflow is going to send the emails and do the same thing as the other one. Check to see, give them a day, see if they finished the test. If they did finish the test, then we're going to move the ticket to PI assessment completed, which is going to trigger another email to get their video. And if they didn't submit it again, we're going to give them that reminder, give them 2 days. And if they don't finish it, then we're going to go ahead and move them to that last stage. Then what we're going to do is this is the workflow for when we get the results in for the predictive index. So we get those results in and it takes a look at which, what the results are. So if they meet what we want them to meet for that particular role, which we have some specific profiles. So if they meet those things, then we're going to move them forward. If they don't meet those things, then we're not going to move them forward. Also, we have a cognitive score requirement for some of these roles. So if they do meet those requirements, we'll move them forward. If they don't, then we're not moving them forward. So then again, if they move forward, then we send them the video email. Again, we give them a day, remind them, check to see if they've submitted the videos. If they haven't, then we remind them. The way we know if they submitted the videos is that we send them a form to submit their Loom video links. And so if those properties are filled out, then we know they did it. If those properties are not filled out, then we know they didn't do it and we need to remind them again. And again, if they don't do it within a certain amount of time, then we're going to go ahead and move them to not hired and do all that fun stuff, okay? So then the next thing that we're going to do, let's jump into the next phase of this. We're going to take a look at the communication that we're sending, right? And we get to use smart content. So if you take a look at this, this is an email that gives them the link for booking their first interview. So what we can do here is use smart content so that for each role, we can put the meeting link of the person who's going to run that interview, right? So here's something to keep in mind. Everyone on your team who's in Hubspot gets a meeting link. And so this is easy to do. However, if you have multiple meeting links or you need multiple meeting links, let's say you only want to be open for interviews in the first half of the day, then what you're going to need to do is have a second meeting link. And that means that you're going to need a sales or service hub seat. So that's just one thing to keep in mind here. But anyhow, we use smart content in all of these, right? So in our email where we ask the video round of questions, we have different questions for all of our roles. So we use one email, one workflow, but we have smart content iterations for each one, right? So that's one place that we use it. Same thing with the interviews, same thing with the test tasks. We are customizing that experience, but using a single email by using smart content, which is also super fun. Then we get into creating our landing page, right? So this is what we do. We have a button here. I'm in the page editor right now, so people can skip all the stuff and jump down to the application, but there we go. So we direct everybody to our website. So I just want to call this out because this is a question that people often have. Yes, we do post these jobs on LinkedIn. We post them on Indeed. We direct people to our website to apply, okay? The reason that we do that, we want them to follow that instruction. We don't want to pay for LinkedIn Recruiter, which is not an inexpensive solution. A LinkedIn Recruiter doesn't feed all of this information into an outside system either. So it doesn't allow us to own our own data. So we direct everybody to our website so that we own the data related to our hiring processes, okay? So then what we get into, let's talk about managing this. Let's talk about managing this from the perspective, right? So now I want to do this. I want to take a look at this as an applicant, and I want to take a look at this as the person who is managing the applicants from inside of your system, okay? So now we have another handout. We have a one-page cheat sheet that's a summary on building your ATS in HubSpot. So please be sure to download that in that tab. But now let's take a look at what it's going to be like to experience this from the side of your team. Okay, let's start there. So you're going to have people in the pipeline, right? So if you move someone to another state, that's going to trigger automation. But like I said, most of these are all moved automatically. So you can track your tickets, see what everybody, and of course I filtered this down. When I did this webinar last year, some HubSpot folks went ahead and filled this out so that I could have this inside of the system. So we have some HubSpot folks there. So then what happens is you click on a ticket, and let me actually go to the ticket. So what happens is you click on this and you open the ticket, right? So when you open the ticket, you're going to be able to see all of this hiring information, and then you're going to be able to click over to the contact. Look how fun this is. We created, someone on our team built a predictive index custom CRM card. So from inside of here, we can see all the hiring information about this person right here on the left-hand side. I get the predictive index information here, right? So we can see the job that they were matched with. Since this was a demo, they were not matched with the job. It would tell us whether the person is a match. It gives us their profile. It gives us their cognitive score. And then we can also click here to view their resume. And that's going to open up right there, right? That is super beautiful. We have everything in this view to know about this applicant. And then if we have playbooks for the interview, we can go ahead and do that right there. And we're going to be able to see everything that's going on with our applicant, who's emailed with them, what emails they have opened, track everything in a single screen. That is not something that you can do with other ATSs because it doesn't, those don't have the benefit of being built on one of the best in-class CRMs out there, okay? So super easy for your team to manage, right? All they have to do is go over here, they click on their ticket, they go into the ticket, they have information they can see in the ticket, right? But then they can go right into the contact record like that. And then they have that beautiful view of everything that they need to know so that once we get to that stage where we're doing a human review, great, let me go ahead and open these links and watch these Loom videos. Let me go ahead and review what's going on here in our predictive index. Let me go ahead and take a look at anything else that we want to know about that particular person, open up their resume. So super easy. And then when we have tasks related to these things, then we can go ahead and manage our tasks as well, right? And so I'm sorry I had to move off that screen. I had that filtered earlier. Not really sure why it's filtered now. This ATS is actually at our live HubSpot instance. And so I don't want to go through all my tasks or show you guys how many overdue tasks I have, all right? But it's that simple, right? You go in, you look at the candidates, you update the, let me go back here. You update people from stage to stage and you just move those tickets along. That way they get the appropriate emails. You can see where everybody is at. You can look at everything about the candidate right here and here, and then you can manage your tasks so that you can run through your task player and check on all. Let's say you have a bunch of videos to look at. Run through them one by one. First, we all know the task player is going to take you to that contact record where you're going to have all this beautiful information, and then you can easily flow through all of those things, okay? So that's what it looks like from the side of the people on your team who are going to be managing this. What's the candidate's experience? Well, I showed you the landing page, right? Where someone's going to go and this, there we go. So they're going to go and they're going to fill this out, right? And then as soon as they fill it out, they're either, if they don't pass screening, they're going to get this, right? And let them know that we'll be updating them within a few days. If they do pass screening, then they get this email, right? We tell them what the hiring process is going to look like. We give them the link to take the behavioral test. We give them some test questions for the cognitive test. We strongly encourage that you practice before you take it. We tell them how long they have. And if they have any limitations that are preventing them from taking this test, we give them an email address to reach out to. So very empathetic and compassionate to our candidates. So then let's say they take that test and they pass. Great, you passed that round. Congratulations. Here's the tool Loom you need to use. Please visit this page. And then again, we give them different questions. And this is smart content right here, giving them different questions. However, we only have to use one form. So we have this page. We have a single form. Here, we again tell them to go over to Loom. And then there we go. We have smart content again. And there we go. Now they can fill in their questions. And we'll use progressive fields as well to fill all this out for them since they filled out a form for us. Okay. Now, let's say they pass that round. Now they get the email telling them, hey, guess what? Congratulations. Now you are invited to do the first interview. So they are going to get that link again based on who they should interview with, based on, and we can use a round robin here, right? We can do all sorts of things with meeting links. Again, using the super powerful infrastructure that we have in HubSpot to run a super slick applicant tracking system process. Okay. And then we update this. We let them know what's going to be happening from here on out now that they've made it to the interview rounds. And then they can go in here for my link for interviews. I don't have any availability this month, but I would fix that if I needed to. All right. So they can go ahead and take a look there. And then if they make it to the second round of interviews, again, they get this. And then we start letting them know what's going to happen with their test task and how that process is going to work because they're getting closer. Now, if somebody is not in the process at any point, and again, we of course use tokens here. So then we let them know that, whether that they're not in the process anymore and that we appreciate them applying, right? And then like I showed you in the beginning, remember, we have all these lists. So people who made it further in the process and are still hireable, we can return to them later on. Then we get into being able to, these are all the workflows. We've built a lot of workflows for this process. And then, as I mentioned before, in the course that I have created, you can go ahead and see how to build every single piece of this, all right? And then we can do reporting here, right? So this is just a simple one that has to do with our applicant tracking system. But, screening questions passed and then profiles by role, we can break that down to see what kind of people are applying for these different roles. And then we can see the number of people who've submitted videos. We can see the number of people who were invited to take this and didn't. And this can help us to refine our process, right? We can see our count of people who have a cognitive over 375 and a breakdown of what those scores are. So we might want to be like, who are our people who had 450 or who are people who had 451? Because those are some of the highest scores that you can get. So this is another way we can interact with our data about our applicants. So this really gives us a lot of options. So what I want to know, I have a poll. I want to check in here and I just have a couple more things to go over. And then I am going to go ahead and open this up for some questions. Okay. So hopefully you grabbed those handouts. If you haven't grabbed them, I recommend that you get over there and you have the process overview. And then we also have the one-page cheat sheet as well. So that's in there too. So Martin just dropped that in. So be sure to get your second download there. I see that most of you grabbed the first download. But I do have one more question for you. Would this ATS solve for your hiring needs? Okay, so I want to know that. Is it going to solve for your hiring needs? So I want to look at those answers because then I want to jump into that. And I want to talk about this a little bit and invite people. I see that one person said yes, 3 people said yes. Well, that's exciting. Go HubSpot and HubSpot ATS for the win. I want to cover a couple things real quick, and then I'm going to open this up for questions. So this solution, as it is built right now and everything that I showed you so far, is going to be best for, in this form, it is not necessarily the best for a recruiting firm. Now we add extra things in if we were a recruiting firm. For example, recruiting firms are going to be doing a lot of outbound, right? Here at Digital Reach, I don't do a lot of outbound. I do some, but I don't do a ton of outbound, right? But if you're doing outbound, you can use things like sequences, right? If you post a large amount of jobs, or if you need to post to multiple job boards, let's say you're a recruiting company or a staffing firm, we can use HubSpot APIs to push jobs to Indeed, to push jobs to LinkedIn, okay? So we can do that through HubSpot. We can get more creative in using custom objects. So we can create a custom object where for each, listen to how cool this is. So what you can do with HubSpot, we can create a custom object where you enter information into properties about that job role. Then using the CMS Hub and HubDB, we can automatically create a job page for that job role. Okay, so we can automate that process. Then what we can do is whenever anybody applies, we can attach their, ticket or application, whatever you're using for the submission. Maybe it's a custom object, maybe it's a ticket or a deal. We can attach that to that specific job opening. So if later you need to report on, I opened this job, how many applicants did I get to? How many applicants did I talk? How many applicants came in? How many applicants did I talk to? You can actually have all of that attached to that, and it makes it really easy to report on that. You can also use some of the dashboards that are used for the Sales Hub to track your activity, right? So if we want to see, hey, this recruiter should be having this many phone calls, this many meetings, this many candidates they're talking to, we can use the activity reporting. We can use the lead object in the prospecting dashboard to do an outbound motion, right? So this is just a little old agency who has an inbound hiring process in what we built, but this is just the tip of the iceberg on what you could build for an ATS, right? So again, if you have a lot of job postings, if you want to automate the web pages, if you want to bring everybody and attach them, rather than having lists like I do, if you want to attach them to a specific opening, the opening for a HubSpot expert in February of 2024, and you want to be able to report on that and track that, you can do that, right? We can also embed the resume into a CRM card. We can also parse resumes using custom coded actions or an external server, and we can pull that information out of the resume and put that into custom properties. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do beyond what I showed you here today. So those are really the capabilities. Now, here's a couple things to keep in mind. Some tools do not allow you to pull applicant information out. So if you want to allow applicants to apply into another system, here's what I'm going to say. If they're applying into another system and that API for a system like LinkedIn Recruiter is closed, it's going to be closed to everybody, right? So I've talked to a number of recruiting firms that are taking people like out of LinkedIn Recruiter and manually entering them into somewhere like Bullhorn. So if you want to continue to receive applications in another system and you need to manually input them, you can still input them and then let the rest of your automations run in HubSpot. So just because there's not an API to bring in the information from a platform that might not allow that information to come out, you can still bring those applicants in and run them through a process. So now that we have gone through all of this, number one, if you are out of time, I want to thank you for being here. And, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can go ahead and scan that QR code if we're not connected already. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Take care. And we will go ahead and we'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks so much.